What up, everybody? This is Dario Hunt for Living Life Fearless, and I'm back with the reaction to season 1 of Westworld. HBO has consistently produced some of the best, most engrossing shows to ever grace the small screen. They make great choices in the programs that they do decide to invest in, and when they do decide to produce a show, they don't cut corners. And with Game of Thrones already proving what they could do with a high budget, adult oriented genre series, I didn't need any convincing that Westworld was something that I needed to check out. So the basic setup for Westworld is sometime in the distant future, maybe in an alternate reality, not necessarily sure about that. We kind of figure out how to make androids that are indistinguishable from humans. And what do we do with this world-changing breakthrough? Well, we make a theme park, of course. But not like Six Flags or Disneyland. It's an entire world set in the Wild West where guests with lots and lots of money can pay to come live out their wildest and darkest fantasies, all at the expense of the androids, aka the hosts. And of course, like any good sci-fi series, things start to go a little bit awry. The story itself isn't anything terribly new for this type of topic. There's been a ton of movies and shows that kind of already covered it. And by the time I was done watching the first episode, I pretty much already knew where things were gonna end up heading, but they still do manage to do a good job of keeping the proceedings interesting. There's a ton of mystery and twists that make the build up to the inevitable outcome an intense ride. And while the story is generally well developed and plays out pretty well, it does start to lose a little bit of its luster towards the end of the show. That's in part due to some giant leaps of logic and chance happenings that kind of pull you out of everything. But where they really succeed at is picking out like these larger existential themes about what it is to actually be human and what it is that determines something or someone actually being alive. These themes are at the very heart of the show and are the driving forces for pretty much everything that unfolds. The production is some of the best I've ever seen on a TV show. So good that I think it could stand up to almost any big budget movie. They really put their money where their mouths were, and I think they really paid big dividends in building one of the most engrossing worlds I've ever seen on TV. The developers went into the same painstaking detail into every little thing about the world of the show as the characters did in the show itself about the park. The world building is really top notch here. It had me fully invested in everything that was at stake. But the story and world are only as good as the characters they have to fill them. And just like everything else, they absolutely knocked the casting out of the park. Anthony Hopkins is fucking Anthony Hopkins, and he's absolutely brilliant on the show. He gets to play the role that he was essentially born to play. A highly intelligent, methodical character with some seemingly sadistic and darker intentions. Just his level of simmering intensity that just lays just below the surface is unmatched. Evan Rachel Wood plays what would be the main protagonist of the show, Dolores, and the range she has to display and the way she pulls it off is absolutely fantastic. In fact, the range they all had to pull off is pretty impressive. Thandie Newton as Maeve, Jeffrey Wright as Bernard, and Ed Harris as the Man in Black all give highly impressive performances and bring real depth to the world and their characters. There's a ton of other side characters with some pretty big names attached to them, and they all do a pretty good job no matter how much screen time they get. But for me, the breakout role of the show was definitely Jeffrey Wright as Bernard. His whole character arc and the range he displays throughout the season is just amazing. What they all do the best job of doing is playing these characters in this gray area, making it hard to outright root one way or another, which in turn just made the show that much more interesting. Season 1 of Westworld was about as engrossing an opening season as I've ever seen. The production was top notch, the acting was superb, and the world building was really, really well done. It was a surprisingly thoughtful season that presented large existential themes and presented a world where everything largely existed in the far more interesting and far more realistic gray area. Yeah, some of the twists and outcomes were telegraphed, but it was one hell of a ride to get in there. Have you seen season 1 of Westworld? What'd you think about it? Did you like the story? Who were some of your favorite performances? Let me know in the comments below, and be sure to head over to Living Life Fearless and leave your rating for season 1. And with that being said, I'm gonna give everybody about 5 seconds before I head on to full-on spoiler territory. Alright, Dolores is Wyatt. I would have to say, in large scheme of things, it kind of made sense. They had been building Wyatt up as like this big bad figure throughout the whole season, but they never really showed who he was. My money was on Ford was going to be Wyatt. I thought he would turn the host into like sort of his own personal army to wipe out the board members and retain control of Park and eventually become the outright villain of season 2. But I did not see a twist coming that Ford was ultimately sympathetic with the host plight. He did a pretty good job of hiding those sentiments throughout the season, and his explanation that suffering was the key to them gaining their consciousness and their free will kind of made sense in the large scheme of things. Bernard being Arnold was pretty clear after they revealed that he was a host himself, which I actually didn't see the twist of him being the host coming. But going back and thinking about all the little hints they left about him being Arnold made this reveal really special. Little things like not being able to see the full picture or not seeing the door when Ford first came out in his own little personal hut. His name being an anagram for Arnold. Teresa joking that he's practicing interacting with humans, and a ton more. They did a pretty good job of things like this all season long. I think most people already came to the conclusion that the Man in Black was indeed William, but the way they laid everything out and built things up still made the reveal work. I just wish that he was a little bit smarter, or that his intentions were a little less on the nose. Like the fact that he couldn't figure out what she was talking about with the maze at the end of the season was kind of annoying. The maze being a red herring was also kind of annoying, but albeit a reasonable one. But none of those things were anywhere as annoying as Felix. Felix was my one big problem with the show. It just felt dumb. It was downright impossible for me to believe that anybody would ever go this far to help a robot escape and murder people on the way to doing it. It just made no sense. There were a lot of leaps of faith and perfect coincidences at the end of the season that really kind of irked me. Even Ford himself wouldn't be able to perfectly control and predict that many variables. It was just too much dumb luck for me. Maeve seemed to achieve her true consciousness when she decided not to follow the plan and leave the park, but instead go back and find her daughter. Whatever happened to Stubbs? Is he alive? I hope so. They confirmed that there's more than one park. Samurai World? Shogun World? Not sure, but it looks like it's going to be fucking awesome. But there's still a lot that needs to be answered for next season. Like, who's left from the board? Because we don't actually see anybody significant die. The Man in Black gets shot in the arm, but that's it. You never see the other girl, I forget her name. She doesn't die. So seeing who survives and who's left will definitely be interesting. And was that really Ford, or was it a host? Because he was building a body when Bernard killed Teresa in his little private lab. I don't think it was a host version of Ford that got killed, because he did hand over control to Bernard right before he gave his speech. But I am hopeful that we get a robot Ford in season 2.